Can you please state your full name for the record?
J. Robert Coleman.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm a radiologist at the Cleveland Clinic.
How long have you had that position?
A year and a half about.
Previously, were you employed with the Erlanger Medical System?
Yes, I was with a private practice that was contracted with them.
And how long did you have that contract?
I worked there from when I finished fellowship in 2020 until I took this job in October of 2023.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen in the jury what your formal education is to be a pediatric radiologist?
Yeah, so obviously graduated high school. That was in 2006. Then went to undergrad at University of Oklahoma.
What did you get your bachelor's in?
Microbiology.
Okay. Where did you go from there?
Then I went to UT Southwestern in Dallas, Texas for medical school. Graduated there in 2010. And then I did a residency in diagnostic radiology, which is like general radiology, which I finished in 2019. And then specific subspecialty fellowship training in pediatric radiology, which I finished in 2020, like I mentioned.
In this particular situation, are you certified to practice as a pediatric radiologist?
Yeah, so all radiologists can read pediatric radiology films. There's a certificate of additional qualification granted from the American Board of Radiology specifically for pediatric radiology, which I also hold.
And what states are you able to practice medicine in?
Right now I have medical licenses in North Carolina, Florida, and Ohio.
Had you previously been certified in the state of Tennessee?
Yes, and Georgia.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
The American Board of Radiology, the American Board of Radiology, obviously, and then the American College of Radiology, which is a separate thing.
And before I get too far away from the topic, how long is the additional training that you get to be board certified in pediatric radiology?
So to be certified in pediatric radiology, in addition to the 5 years of radiology residency, you also have to do an extra year at an accredited pediatric radiology fellowship. So it's an additional year on top of the already 5 years. And then you have to take a test and pass that test.
Do you subscribe to any medical journals?
Pediatric radiology.
And approximately how many x-rays and scans and surveys have you read over your career? And I know you won't have an exact number, but just ballpark.
Yeah, it would be very tough. It's well over tens of thousands and probably over 100,000 total.
Your Honor, at this point in time, the state would tender Dr. J. Coleman as an expert as a pediatric radiologist.
Mr. Hood. Ms. Bernard.
No objection, Your Honor.
This witness will be admitted for that purpose.
Dr. Coleman, I'm going to call your attention to December the 8th of 2021 and ask where you worked at that point in time.
At Erlanger Hospital.
And were you the pediatric radiologist that read the x-rays that are associated with the December 8th, 2021 films for Jameson Timms?
Yes.
Were there any findings?
It was a normal limited skeletal survey.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Particularly as to the ribs, were there any fractures identified on the ribs?
There were no rib fractures.
When a bone is broken, typically how long would it take before you would expect to see some callousing forming around the bone to show that it's healing?
Yeah, typically in the range of 10 to 14 days.
Did you see any callousing on any of Jameson's bones?
No.
Did you see any compression fractures on the spine?
No.
You indicated that he had a normal exam. There was one note off to the side about physiologic periosteitis. I don't think I said the last word right, periostosis.
Yeah, it's periosteitis.
Okay, so I was closer the first time. What exactly is that?
So that is a normal, as it says, physiologic, so part of a normal bodily process that is commonly seen in the 1 month to 6 month age range. We're not exactly sure what causes it. It is thought to be related to just the rapid growth of the bones during that period, and it can be seen in infants at term and preterm infants as well.
Did you see any evidence of metabolic bone disease when you reviewed the scans associated with Jamison-Timms?
No, there were no evidence of metabolic or a congenital bone disease.
And what would you consider a congenital bone disease?
So congenital is a bone disease that they're born with. So that would be something like osteogenesis imperfecta would probably be the biggest one relevant to this case.
And then just for comparison purposes, can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a metabolic bone disease would be then?
So metabolic would be related to how the bones are formed, usually having to do with the like nutritional things. So rickets, for example, or vitamin D deficiency would be the stereotypical most common metabolic bone disease.
My last question along these lines were the x-rays that you read that were associated with Jamison-Timms on November the 18th of 2021 consistent with a normal or inconsistent with a normal exam?
Sorry, which?
My question would be, is the scans that you read on November the 18th, I'm sorry, I have the wrong date, December the 8th of 2021, I'm glad you caught that, thank you. December the 8th of 2021, consistent or inconsistent with a normal exam?
They were normal.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point in time, the state would tender State's Exhibit number 5. It would be the formal disc containing the Erlanger scans. And in addition to that, well, I'll get that admitted first.
Okay, any objection to State's Exhibit 5, Mr. Hood? Ms.
In
Bernard.
addition
wait,
to-
Wait a minute, Ms. Bernard?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, State's 5 will be admitted.
In addition to that, just for the court's purposes and the court reporter's purposes, there are 2 sets of scans on this disc. My second witness will put in the other set. But the films associated with this particular scan, we've marked as 5AA through 5PP. And the defense had an opportunity to review those yesterday and see the markings on them and the exhibit stickers, so I would tender those as well at this time.
So let me, for purposes of the record, you have taken State's Exhibit number 5 and you have made copies of the scans that this witness is testifying about, and you've identified those copies as State's AA through 5AA through 5PP, is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Hood, any objection?
Okay.
Ms. Bernard?
No objection, Your Honor.
They'll be admitted, Ms. Fox.
Your witness.
Mr. Hood?
I presume you put the Zoom books into the same.
Well, so we have a camera both at the lectern, and there's also a camera at your table, so it's just whatever's most convenient for you.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Doctor. How are you?
Good.
My name is Jason Hood. I'm an attorney here. I represent Mr. Brady Timms in this case. Appreciate you joining us from Texas this morning. Few questions for you. You indicated that to get the certification for pediatric radiology, you had to take a written exam. Is that correct?
It's an electronic exam like most of our board exams are nowadays.
Okay. And that is an exam that's prepared, to your knowledge, by whom?
By the American Board of Radiology and other pediatric radiologists that will prepare the questions and certify them.
Have you ever had the opportunity to meet any of the authors of that exam?
I don't know. It's possible that in passing I would have met them, but I don't actually know who makes the questions.
I don't know if you're aware that there were images taken of Jamison in January of 2022. So a few weeks after you reviewed these images in December of 21. Were you aware of that?
I've been told that. I haven't seen the images myself.
And those images purport to show, and when I say those images, I mean the images taken in January of 22, purport to show healing rib fractures, posterior rib fractures on the left side of Jamison, I think at the 8th, 9th, and 10th ribs. Have you been made aware of that before?
I heard that those images were taken, but like I said, I haven't seen them, so I don't know for sure.
Okay. If I had, and I'll pose this sort of in the vein of a hypothetical question. You're an expert, so you get to speculate a little bit, unlike most witnesses. If I have consulted with one of the authors of the test that you take to become certified in pediatric radiology, and she has reviewed the January images taken at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and acknowledges calluses on the left 8th, 9th, and 10th ribs, but says it is impossible, in her opinion, to date when those fractures occurred. What is your thought about that?
I think often when you compare with the other images that are done beforehand, and when, how should I say this? So knowing what previous images looked like gives you a hint to how long ago the fractures occurred. Because you can expect, like I said before, you can expect to start to see healing changes around 10 to 14 days. After that, it gets more tricky because you're looking for subtleties in how much it's healed, which is obviously trickier and comes with experience.
So, if I told you that she's had the ability to review the CHOA images and all of the images that you reviewed at Erlanger, and you not having had the opportunity to review the CHOA images, does that weigh on your mind at all in terms of the opinion that you've given?
I would say that the images that I read were normal, and I haven't looked at those later images, so I don't know how to comment on those.
In terms of reviewing your records, Ms. Fox asked you about metabolic bone disease, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear about the language that you placed in your record. What you indicated was that you saw no definitive evidence of metabolic bone disease. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Does that exclude the possibility of metabolic bone disease?
So that language isn't going to say that I did not see any metabolic bone disease.
What is the impact of the word definitive in your record?
That there's findings of metabolic bone diseases that are definitive.
Okay. But you're using the word to help define the word. So when you use the word definitive in that sentence, what is the meaning of the word definitive?
Findings that are clearly representative of that etiology.
So I deal in my law practice sometimes with doctors and with radiologists, and no offense to any radiologist, but what I've kind of learned over the years is you all tend to be very, very careful with the language that you use.
Yeah, I would say that's true.
The word definitive, in my experience, is not there by accident. So my question to you is, you placed definitive in there for a reason. Was it to say, I can't definitely say there's no metabolic bone disease, but I can't rule it out either.
No, it's to say that so, for example, a classic sign of rickets would be frayed and splayed metaphyses, in which case I would have taken that phrase out and put in that there was evidence of rickets. There was no evidence of rickets, so there was nothing that was definitive for a metabolic bone disease.
Would there be any radiological evidence of vitamin D deficiency? Not formal diagnosis of rickets, but a vitamin D either deficiency or insufficiency. Would that appear on the X-ray image?
I think I see what you're getting at. So a patient can have that underlying problem and not have radiologic signs of it.
Doctor, I don't know what brings you, I don't know if you're working this morning or not working or whatever. We greatly appreciate you being available and talking to us this morning. Thank you, sir. Ms. Bernard has some questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Ms. Bernard?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
And good morning, Dr. Coleman.
Morning.
Thanks again for joining us. I'm Catherine Bernard, attorney for Carrie Timms. And just wanted to continue a few questions regarding your expertise. Are there any special challenges with pediatric radiology and reading scans, particularly as they relate to x-rays of infants?
So, one, kids are not little adults, so they don't have the same pathology that adults have. Kids don't heal the same way that adults do. They don't present the same way that adults do. So that can be a challenge for some people. They also squirm a lot, so sometimes the images can be blurry and we have to retake them. But just the common issue when dealing with children.
And so is that particularly an issue when you are seeking to, well, I suppose you are not in the position of actually performing the x-rays, you're reading the scans that are produced afterwards, right?
Yeah, so as a pediatric radiologist, you would read the scans, but you also quality check them to make sure that they're good enough for the purpose that you're performing.
Okay. And so you mentioned that you were with a contractor that was working at Erlanger in December of 2021, is that right?
Yeah, so like many hospitals, they have groups of physicians in private practice, and the hospital will contract with that private practice group to provide radiology services or surgical services or anesthesia. And that was the situation here.
And so were you solely providing pediatric radiology services at Erlanger, or did you have any more extensive role?
So I primarily did pediatric radiology on weekends. My job included also covering adult radiology exams for a time, so I would do both during those shifts.
And how long had you been working at Erlanger as of December 2021?
Would have been about a year and a half, because I started July 1st of 2020.
And did you interact with the doctors who would order the radiology scan analysis in a particular case?
Yes.
And so in this case, do you recall which doctor had authorized the scan and that you were communicating with?
I don't. Frequently it was Carla Garcia, but I don't know in this particular case who it was.
And in fact, that is Dr. Carla Garcia is who is recorded on there. Now, were you familiar with any focus or area of focus that Dr. Garcia had?
She was the physician that mostly took care of the child abuse cases or the suspected child abuse cases.
So that was her focus? She was a child abuse pediatrician?
So she did that. That was primarily the way that I interacted with her. I think she also, I don't want to speculate about the other jobs that she did, but that's how I frequently interacted with her.
Now, you never examined Jamison Timms personally, right? Your responsibility
Right.
was radiology, so you never saw the infant when he came into the hospital, right?
No, I did not.
Do you recall the first time that you were made aware of his case and the need for your analysis of the radiologic scans?
Yeah, it would have been about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Before that, I hadn't heard of it.
And that's 2 or 3 weeks ago from now?
Yeah, that was the first time I heard about the case, this
Okay.
case.
So, taking us back to December of 2021, were you made aware by Dr. Garcia or anybody else, hey, we've got an infant in here, we need you to look at the scans, or did you just receive the scans and perform your analysis?
No, so I got those scans, so back in 2021, I saw the exam. The exam has a reason for exam, which is, follow-up, suspected non-accidental trauma. So at that time, I knew that this medical case, as opposed to the legal case, I knew that the medical case was happening.
And so you do make a distinction between the medical and the legal cases there?
Yeah, because I think I misunderstood your first question.
I may have asked it in an unclear fashion. So I think you were saying that you became aware of this case and the need for your testimony today, about 2 to 3 weeks ago?
Right, yeah, correct.
And you had not been over the case since then in the intervening 3 years, right?
Right, yes.
Now, you mentioned in your scan the symmetric periosteal reaction, and I think you had talked about that with Ms. Fox a little bit. Is that like a bone growth and inflammation issue? Could you tell us a little bit more about that reaction?
Yeah, so like I said, it's a normal finding that's expected in the 1 to 6 month age range. And it is unclear exactly what causes that, but it is thought to be related to the rapid growth of the bone during that time. It's common to see it along the long bones in the legs, so the tibia and femurs, as well as the humeri, so the upper arm bone.
Is it fair to say that this is not something that is completely understood and that you can map out in terms of we expect to see this at 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, or can we do that?
Yeah, we expect to see it in the 1 to 6 month age range. It can be asymmetric, which can trick people up. But if you see it on the same sides or on both sides and it looks the same, then it's characteristic and typical for physiologic periostitis.
And then you did not do, it says under scheduling instructions on your report, no skull, spine, or pelvis needed unless the radiologist wants them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's standard. So this was a limited bone survey. It was a follow-up. And so to reduce the radiation dose that these kids get, if they're already getting a whole lot of x-rays, we don't re-image the skull or pelvis typically. So the original bone survey, the not follow-up one, would have included additional radiographs that we don't do on the follow-up, unless there was a problem. So if there had been a skull fracture, then we would have gotten repeat skull radiographs. If that makes sense.
So are you referring to the skeletal survey that was done on November 18th of 2021 that you were making comparisons to?
I'm saying if, I assume, so it's typical for the original full skeletal survey to also include those regardless. And typically the follow-ups are a limited skeletal survey and don't include those. I actually don't know for certain what the original one included, but that is how it typically was protocoled.
Okay. So you didn't do an exam of Jameson's spine in the x-rays, did you?
Mine should have included it. At least, so the chest and abdomen will also include images of the spine just because of where they are. So the spine is included in those.
Okay. Would that be listed under findings, under bony thorax?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so if your report doesn't mention anything about the spine being normal or abnormal, is that standard, or is that a function of this follow-up not being focused on the spine?
So if there was anything abnormal with the spine, it would have been included in there as abnormal. The exam is also not totally focused on the spine, and so that's why there's no, this is normal. But if there had been something abnormal in the spine, which I've seen before, then it would have been in the bony thorax section.
Okay. And so this was a follow-up survey to the skeletal survey that was done on November 18th, right?
Yes.
So did you have the opportunity to review the scans from November 18th prior to performing your follow-up analysis of the new scans done on December 8th?
Yes, and it should be listed as a comparison typically in the report.
Okay, and so if it says the comparison and then just has the date, is that pretty standard?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have like a whole other analysis of the scans from the 18th? You just have one analysis of both the 18th and the 8th?
So when reading the follow-up exam, we would have both sets of images up at that time and look at both pictures to compare them.
So if your report doesn't contain any comparisons between those two scans, were they identical, or, I mean, you mentioned that that these changes, especially with periostitis, can occur very quickly in infants.
Yeah, so we expect them in the 1 to 6 month age range. But if so the comparison doesn't always get mentioned in there, so I'm not going to say, there were no rib fractures before, as there are also no rib fractures now. It just informs the analysis of it, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right, and then I know my colleague asked you a few questions regarding the use of the word definitive. Were you able to observe any radiographic evidence from other parts of the body beyond what you had reviewed in this follow-up?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry, I'll try to be more clear. This, the findings that you have put in this report, do they include an analysis of the skull and extremities?
So not the skull, yes, the extremities.
And that's because you're just wanting to avoid subjecting an infant to additional radiation, especially in the brain area?
Right, yes.
Okay. Is there anything else about your review and comparison that you haven't mentioned in your testimony here today?
No?
Did you have any follow-up involvement whatsoever with the case?
No, like I said, I didn't hear about this at all until 3 weeks ago.
Okay, so you weren't contacted by CHOA, and there were no conversations with you as the radiologist who was doing the analysis in December?
No.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you for your time, Dr. Coleman.
Ms. Fox, anything else of this witness?